Midwest Redox webinar, in-season insights on RDX-N trials, opportunities to take back your fertility program in 2026. So I am here with my co-host, Chad, sales manager of the Midwest, corporate agronomist co-founder John Kelly, and then we've got two guest participant trial partners that are going to be speaking about their experiences with RDX-N in the field, Wyoming and Illinois represented.
Hey, this is going to be a fun one. I think most of the time when we get on these, we talk about educating the marketplace. John Kelly does this quite a bit in the field with us. I'm excited that we got John with us here today too. He's sitting still for 1 minute, which is nice. Usually you're in the field, John. This thing is, we start to kick things off. I challenge everybody that's listening or that will listen. When you start looking, yes, taking back control, but it really is about how do we mitigate stress and retain yield, right? I think if you look at when we plant a bag of whatever it is, as soon as we plant it, we're in stress mode and we're losing, right? How do we mitigate that stress and retain yield? And some of the things that we do at Redox is a bit different. Aimee, I'd love for you to kick us off and talk about some of the technology.
Sure, cool. So I'll go a little bit into who is Redox, right? Some folks have never heard of Redox, some folks have been using Redox for multiple years. Talk about the science, and I'll tap John Kelly on as my resident expert here if we've got some tough questions. I know Matt's got some questions for him. And then again, we'll talk about what we're seeing in the field and then how to maximize ROI going into 2026.
And then Aim, with the other two guys on the line here, right? You can talk to Matt and Brett down here, again, out of Wyoming and Illinois. So again, stay tuned. Midway, we're going to get into some of the real grower experience, but dive into some of the family history of the business, if you would.
100%. So Redox Bio-Nutrients, family-owned business, been around for over 30 years. So Darren and Val started the company with John over 30 years ago, and Cody's one of the sons who runs the retail location, Ag Nutrients, out of Georgia, and then Colton's the president of Redox Bio-Nutrients. So it's still family-owned and operated for over 30 years. And when I talk about Redox and how I got involved, I really like to highlight on our core values, because I think that is something that we live and breathe every day. You know, when we're tapped to go to our headquarters in Burley, Idaho, Darren always talk about, tell the truth, right? Whether it comes to data, making product recommendations, walking the field and understanding where the opportunities are. But that is something that we eat, live, and breathe, right? When we go through how we do business together. And then what I would challenge folks as we introduce concepts like RAM technology and plant charge balance and what RDX-N does, to think outside the box, right? And so that goes to being creatively driven, right? And we think about taking back control of your fertility program, guys coming up with different ideas, like what can we do, right, to make a bigger impact on ROI? Scientifically knowledgeable, and I'll just pick on John since he's here, but when we have our big agronomy meetings at our headquarters, first thing we do is a closed book agronomy exam, which is graded, and then we go over the questions. So, Matt and Brett, if you ever come out to Idaho, we're definitely going to take an agronomy exam, and we won't hold it against you, but that's something we focus on, continuous process improvement. We want to be the best agronomists out there, and then finally hungry for achievement, right? It's about winning, and it's not just us winning, but the team, and that's us and the farmers, right? If we don't win on the field, then we're not going to be around for another 30 years, right?
That's right. And Aimee, the only other thing I'd add to that is the first time I met Darren and John is that was what they lived, and really kind of the foundation of the business was, he says, Chad, find, basically tell the truth, find the right people, and everything else falls into place. And that goes through our dealer network as well, right? So you're going to hear two guys talk today that look at things differently, that train their customers on how to use things, be more efficient, how to maximize yield, how to max ROI. That's the unique thing and where we look to operate.
Yep, 100%. And then this picture of our location in Burley, Idaho. So we are U.S. owned and operated, manufacturer out of the U.S. We're not venture capitalist backed. We're not looking to exit. I think it's important as guys are moving into a much more tougher commodity market to know that it's one family business to another, right? I think that really matters. So we're going to jump into the science, right? And what we'll say, Darren always says when we're over, again, training at headquarters, is that we're in the plant energy business. And so if you think about the plant's foundational energy system, that's photosynthesis, right? So it's sunlight energy, water, and carbon dioxide. And really what happens is that water molecule breaks. You've got protons, electrons. But what's happening is that charge is established, right? You have an electrical charge right at the beginning, right? And that's the plant's primary metabolic system. And that system has to stay in balance in order to create carbohydrates, amino acids, and roots and shoots, right?
Aimee, and this is everything when you start talking about fertility programs, right? Let me just back up for a minute because this is the thing that's killer to me in the marketplace right now. The primary thing that we hear is nitrogen prices, phos prices, right? We hear about things out of control. How do we get, let's cut, let's cut, let's cut. Like there's for producers that are listening, right? Plant charge balance, bringing this technology to the marketplace to be able to optimize your nutrients and optimize yield is where we're going to go, right? And so where she's going to dig into this is the science behind some of the technology. We're going to talk about a product that that is basically called RDX-N, but the technology behind it is called RAM technology. And so what she's going to dive into here is the unique features of the technology within Redox Bio-Nutrients.
Right, right. And it starts with photosynthesis, which starts with an electrical charge. And just like the plant's energy system has electrical charge, all of our fertilizers have electrical charge, right? We're talking about the prices of MAP and DAP, right? Guys are looking at their phosphorus levels in their soils, but that phosphorus is tied up, right? Because that phosphorus is highly reactive, it's negatively charged, it's locked up, right, with something positively charged, like iron or calcium, right? So when we think about fertility programs, we typically talk in pounds per acre, right? And I would challenge the people listening to think about it in terms of charge per acre. And it's the focus of the plant's energy system, photosynthesis is charged, fertilizers carry a charge, right? And then the plant itself also has to deal with charge. And so we focus on what's called plant charge balance. And so for every second of every day, the plant has to balance itself 50% positive and 50% negative.
Every bushel matters now more than ever, right? I know you mentioned that a few different times. John, when we start talking about that and we look at nutrients, not all nutrients are created equal. When you started the company with Darren back in the day, you looked at things differently. When you talk about plant charge balance, what's the first question people start asking you?
Well, it's a different paradigm, isn't it? Different perspective. We tend to think in, as you say, units, rather than let's look from the plant's perspective. The plant's perspective is it has these ions it's taking up that has to deal with those. And it's trying to take this photosynthetic energy and allocate as much as possible to the crop versus dealing with stress. And unfortunately, the very fertilizer we apply can induce some of these imbalances. So understanding how to manage those better is really key to this plant charge balance.
That's right. And John, I think when we talk about energy, movement of energy, redirection of energy, now all of a sudden we can move to most of the time when we have an imbalance, what's happening is most of that energy is moving to correct that stress. Imagine if we can move that energy to production. And that's really what plant charge balance is about. If we can have that environment where we're optimized, we can optimize yield, all those other things that come along the way. Aim?
Yeah, and I think the opportunity is that 80% of the out of balance in most plants is because of excess nitrate nitrogen, right? So if we go back and we look at what's going on in this cycle here, this primary metabolic system, if we over apply too much nitrate nitrogen, that system starts to shut down, right? Sugar production, starch production starts to shut down, and that plant's out of balance and has to work itself back to get to balance. And so there's an opportunity there to basically correct that system, and that's what RDX-N does, and that's what all of the redox technology does, is to create that plant charge balance.
So Aim, I want to ask John here too, because I've heard Aimee talk about this quite a bit when we're in dealer meetings or working with growers doing cipher analysis. But if you look at the primary pathway, NPK, right? That's what most people are really set and knowledgeable of, right? We've kind of hit the limits of NPK. When we look at the secondary metabolic pathways, that's really where we operate.
Yes, yes. And the graphic that Aimee just puts up illustrates this perfectly. If we just focus on NPK, we're very limited in our crop performance potential. We have to look at the secondary metabolic pathways, because those are those that can drive energy, that photosynthetic energy, to more yield, more efficiency, rather than correcting imbalances.
Well said. And I think that's it, right? So if the one thing, and you guys know that have watched me before, when I start talking about the one thing I want you to remember is NPK is one of our limiting factors, right? When you look at as a producer, how do we activate that secondary metabolic pathway? How do we get to the next level of nutrients? And that's what we're looking at with plant charge balance and really what the RAM technology allows us to do. And Aimee, I know you're going to talk about it, but now all of a sudden, if we can redirect some of that energy by balancing charge ions, like you talked about, negative and positive ions, if we can absorb or give off charge, then we can start to get that environment balance.
Yeah, and there's multiple benefits for performance potential. One of the key is we know that plants will allocate a high percentage of all the photosynthetic energy out the root system to drive biology and soil health. And so when a crop is more in balance, or the energy can be allocated, because we are in balance, can be allocated to sending photosynthetics metabolites out that root system. Now we're driving biology. Now we're driving nutrient release. We're driving better potassium uptake. All those come together. So it's a cycle it's really beneficial, that all starts with this redox reaction, which is, as Aimee said, the gain or loss of electrons, but the redox reaction that's most common on Earth is photosynthesis.
Mm-hmm.
So we want photosynthetic potential, not to deal with less stress and more performance.
Well said. Aim, when you start looking at what we've seen this season and how growers kind of take that on and push what I call the easy button, right? The easy button to me is the nitrogen that we're applying today gets stored most of the time. Most of that gets stored as energy that could be stress, but we can optimize that nutrient and make that plant utilize or metabolize that nitrogen more effectively.
Yeah, I think of the two metabolic systems, and I don't want to go in the deep end, but I think of like big circle, little circle. That's how I explain it, right? So big circle is the primary metabolic system, right? And if that gets out of whack, right, you over apply nitrogen, the plant can do one of two things. It can store it as vegetative growth, or it can convert it, metabolize it, which is what we'll talk about, what RDX-N helps to do. That plant can metabolize that nitrogen to create ammonia, which will create amino acids, roots, and shoots, right? So it can do one of two things. And if it's out of balance, that system shuts down. It's less functional. And you can't access little circle, what I call secondary metabolic system, unless big circle is up and running. So once you create plant charge balance, you have an opportunity to tap into the secondary metabolic pathway. And the sole purpose of that pathway is plant defense. So we think about, what's the number one limiting yield factor in seed? It's environmental stress, right? Whether it's abiotic, biotic stress. If we can reduce stress, or we can grow a plant that can better adapt to its environment, then we're going to get the upside for yield. Every time you create plant charge balance, you see an increase in yield.
That's a good segue too. And I know the two dealers that we're working with on the line here with Matt and Brett, that's what they've seen, right? And we're going to get into some of those details, but then it comes down to retention of yield, right? Instead of loss, yield loss, essentially back to the top. As soon as we plant it, we know environmental conditions have been eating and chipping away at that yield. And so we hear a lot of people that talk about yield gain. But what we talk about is, retention of that yield instead of losing that in form of stress. And some of the tools that you'll see here are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. So how do we tap into the second metabolic pathway? How do we create plant charge balance? And it's through our RAM technology. And what RAM means is redox active molecules. It's a scientific term. We didn't make it up. It's also the name of the company. We've been doing this for over 30 years, which I think is really cool. And so it's an organic molecule. It has a special job that has the ability to go into a plant system and act like what I call a shock absorber. It can either gain or it can either give or take an electron depending on what's going on in the plant. And so it'll help assist the plant to create plant charge balance. And then with that, it stabilizes its internal system, right? It allows these metabolic systems to come fully back online, which means stronger photosynthesis, right? Greater ability to combat abiotic stress defense, greater ability to metabolize and create carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, right? So all of our technology has RAM in it, right? And specifically, we'll talk about RDX-N, RDX-N is powered by RAM technology.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue. If you don't mind, I'd like to introduce the guys, the stars of the show, if you will, Matt and Brett. But Matt, can I start with you with Severson AG? Matt,
Sure.
you're out of Rockford, Illinois. Now,
Yes.
I'm going to pick on that a little bit because I'm an Iowegian, and I think that Iowa Illinois thing is always a battle, right? In football, the Hawkeye Cyclones always have that number. But Matt, thanks for joining us this morning. Good to have you on.
No problem.
Hey, this year we were just talking a little bit earlier about some RAM technology and RDX-N. I know that you're a Total Acre member, you and Mark, and really the way you look at things is different, right? You take the systematic approach to farming. I know when it comes to the agronomic side of things, you physically not just looking at, but taking that data and digesting it. You put RDX-N this year through the ringer, I guess is what I would call it. I don't know. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing. But before you get into this, I want to know a little about your operation, what you guys are doing in Illinois. Talk about what you and Mark are farming.
Yeah. So Mark Severson is the owner of Severson AG here in Rockford, Illinois, which, if you don't know, it's way up near the Wisconsin border. So we're not in the flat black soil that a lot of folks in Illinois are fortunate to have. A little more shallow and rocky up here. But I'm kind of serve as the crop manager here. Mark also oversees a trucking company, a consulting company, and obviously the farm as well. So we try to be as data driven as we possibly can. So the RDX-N trial for us came about on accident almost. We were talking to Brian Maddox through the Total Acre group, and they actually had a trial fall through due to a act of God or Mother Nature or whatever you could say. So right away, we had already been talking to Aimee about RDX-N and weren't quite ready to make the leap quite yet. So we scooped that trial up. We have a really nice trial over at one of our larger fields, actually. So what's different about ours, it is a wide drop only trial. So I believe the other folks who have this RDX-N trial within the Total Acre group, they did the nitrogen reduction out of their what I would call pre-emerge planting pass as well as their side dress pass. So ours is unique in that way. We were late to the party, I guess you could say, but we followed the instructions and we've been taking some tissue samples. I guess, Aimee, do you want to start putting up there we go. Okay.
Yeah, before you do this, Matt, can I just, your operations dialed. I mean, I've been out there. I know you've been out there as well. You worked with Mark. I think out of the gate, you guys did a cipher analysis, and we'll talk more about that too. But, talk about systematic approach, right? If we can now know something different, and again, I'm not tissue sampling. You guys have always done that within Total Acre. But when we did a cipher analysis, it kind of undercovers what's plant available. I know you started there. But then when you started to kind of pick up the pieces in terms of, when can we apply this trial? That's why we went wide drop, because it was late season. But it was nice probably to have John and Aimee out there to kind of guide you with this protocol. But at the end of the day, you guys are very well educated in understanding how to do these trials. Been doing these for Total Acre for 5-6 years now.
Yeah.
So go into the details, because I know you started out wet, got great moisture. Now, obviously, you're cutting beans and it's dry as heck, right? That's how it always works when they're putting on fall cover crops.
So I'm a charts and graphs guy, so I'm going to make everyone struggle through it. So.
All right.
So I guess we were wet, and then the rain kind of shut off. As you can see in that chart, we were pretty dry. And in terms of GDUs, we were a couple hundred GDUs behind, and everyone in Northern Illinois was, oh my God, my soybeans aren't growing. The corn is yellow. It looks terrible. It's over. But it's, as you can see, right around the 4th of July, that's when we finally started getting some heavier rains, and we finally started to catch back up on our sunlight and our growth units. So a little bit slow start to the season. Mid-season was more of a typical average year. Pretty warm this year, a lot of humidity. If you have a stressful year, this was the definition of a agronomically stressful year in Northern Illinois, and all the way to the very end. Then, as if that wasn't enough, we got the left-right hook of tar spot and southern rust. Which caught a lot of people off guard in this geography. We haven't had a southern rust like this in Northern Illinois for a number of years. But perhaps we had the wrong fungicides out there in certain cases. But if you want to move on to the next one, I just want to give everyone an overview of where we were at heading into this trial. So as I said earlier, this was a wide drop only trial. This field, as you can see, the passes were east and west. So our grower standard is on the left. Our Y drop was 20 gallons of UAN, 3 gallons of ATS. Hygihume, which if anyone's not familiar, that's just Helena's humic acid. It's a liquid humic acid. And then of course we had our Molly. The soluble and zinc sulfate were tissue sample driven in terms of boron and zinc being a little short heading into this critical stage. So what we came up with, we reduced the nitrogen in half from the 32. We did not mess with the ATS. We wanted the sulfur. Our tissue samples were okay on sulfur, but we also needed to continue to supply it. Otherwise, we would have started going the other direction, actually. So everything was exactly the same. The only thing we changed, 20 gallons to 10 gallons on UAN and RDX-N 22 ounces. I think the standard use rate is a pint, but we cranked it up because of our how high our rate of 32 was, I think is what the explanation I was given on that.
Okay.
So, and we alternated the passes. So it's kind of hard to tell in the picture, but the darker orange passes would be our grower standard. And then we basically just striped that part of the field east and west with I took a special mix out to the field with just the RDX, loaded that separate, applied it separate, skipping passes. So that was the general trial layout for us. If you want to move on. So the application was made July 8th. So that big black line going across, everything below that would be after the application. So we had a high yield site, average yield site, and at the bottom was the RDX-N yield site. So I tissue sampled it a month following the application. First thing that jumped out to me was not even the nitrogen. Of course, I was scared to death that we were going to blow out on nitrogen. Now, of course, you ask anyone, I want you to cut your nitrogen in half on your Y drop, they're going to say, oh my goodness, I'm not doing that. But the first thing that stood out to me was the uptick in phosphorus right away. And that's one thing I was going to ask about. What would be the explanation for us seeing an uptick in phosphorus? You get talking about plant charge balance. I assume it has something to do with that. That's above my pay grade.
Yeah, I can comment on that very briefly. The indications are that as there's higher exudates going out in the RDX-N treated plants, higher photosynthetic exudates. So that's driving more biology, which drives more carbon dioxide production, carboxylic acid, which solubilizes more phosphorus.
Okay, interesting. So that was that July 14th tissue sample. That's what stood out to me immediately. We hadn't had a 0.4 since early June. And here we are a month later, we actually recaptured that level of phosphorus content in the tissue, which I love to see that. We have lower testing phosphorus soil types in this area. So that's quite honestly, I was not expecting that. That came out of left field. In terms of nitrogen, parity or better. Ever since the application, was not expecting that. I was expecting a 1/10 of a point, 2/10 of a point off. If you cut your nitrogen in half, of course you would expect that. Just hasn't been the case. And every week I would walk out to this same spot and keep taking samples. And I said, this is the week that I'm going to get them. I'm going to get them. But it never did happen. We maintained all the way through August 11th, which would have been my last sample. Another comment I'd like to make, manganese. I'm also assuming similar explanation as to why we saw the phosphorus. Last season, we really struggled with manganese in corn. So we tried to address it. This seemingly helped on accident, is the way I would put it. That manganese was not on my radar making this application. We remained primarily focused on nitrogen, sulfur, zinc, and boron. And you hear Randy Dowdy and David talking about one thing, you fix one thing, that might not, sorry, my automatic lights just went off.
Pay your bills.
You hear Randy and David talk about you fix one thing, you inadvertently might fix another. So I think that's what we did here. Boron was better, zinc was better in most cases. So like I said, I was totally keyed in on the nitrogen going into this trial and pleasantly surprised across the board. The secondaries in the trace elements, very impressed.
So Matt, let me just kind of I want you to talk more about what he just mentioned is, overall a healthier plant, right? And some of the things he's seeing from a tissue sampling standpoint. But this NPR, nutrient power ranking, just for folks maybe that aren't familiar, Matt, I'm going to give them a little rundown, not on the details of what the software is, but why you're able to look at this and what you're looking to adjust. You mentioned, weekly sampling to be able to adjust. This is a deficiency. How do you correct this? And if you correct this, then what does it do the following week? That's really, when I talk about a systematic approach, what Matt within that total acre system is, they're doing things unique. So if there were ever anybody that could look literally under a microscope of what's happening within tissue sampling and products, feature benefits, are they working, are they not? The way you do this is different, right? It's certainly powerful. Maybe, John, if you could, when you start talking like Matt and seeing some of the things on the bottom half of this this slide where it's all green, right? Green, 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 the little NASCAR. But we talk about nitrogen, RDX-N, but having an overall healthier environment where that secondary metabolic pathway, we talk about root exodus, you talk about a system that's working better and more optimized. I would assume, like Matt's talking, that's why we're seeing these results.
Correct. It's energy allocation. The plan is able to expend less on balancing itself and more to growing the crop, which in turn benefits other nutrients as well. Very indirectly, as I mentioned, but when you're allocating more energy to the rhizosphere, that is better release, better availability of the nutrients in there. And of course, in the case of manganese, one of the key tie-up elements is phosphorus. Yep. Glyphosate, that's been well documented as well. And so it's a microbial response for more energy being allocated to that system.
I love it, Matt. That's great information. I'm gonna switch over to Brett here, but I want you to just keep the ammo loaded, right? Because we're gonna come back ask you a few questions. Okay.
Okay.
So speaking of, and I want to get to this, but this is the thing that scares everybody: pricing on nitrogen, right? So instead of talking about that, I want to jump into Brett. So Brett, what we talked about here with Matt was really later season. We talked about Y drops. I know a lot of the systems you're working with is different. So Brett, I'm going to introduce you here. I know you got that Pioneer shirt with that American flag in the background. You guys are doing some cool stuff out in Torrington, Wyoming. But Brett with Meyer Seed, thanks for coming on this morning.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I, like Matt, I'm also a member of the Total Acre, which has really taught us to look at things differently. And that's actually how we met Darren. It was totally by chance. We did one of the side sessions, and Darren was speaking, Darren Moon, and everything he said just made absolute sense. A totally different way of looking at things. And we went right up to him after the meeting was over and said, we need to talk to you. We need to get some of this out here. And so we got with Zach, who is our Zach Carlson, and Zach got us the product. And I mean, they made some pretty bold claims about 50%, reduction in nitrogen use. And I'm like, okay, I've heard this before. I believe it, but we're going to test it. Because if I'm going to present this to my customers who are my friends, it's got to work. It makes sense. The science all makes sense, but we still have to make it work. So we decided this year to, we strip till out here. So we split the application, and we actually put a pint. We put a pint with 20 gallons of N, or with actually a different product, the liquefied urea, in the strip till right below the seed. And let me back up on this just a second. We first did this testing in a greenhouse this year in our building over the winter. We did it with about 3 different products. And when we did the tissue sampling, the Redox was far superior, better than any other tissue sample we had. So that's what got us to really asking a lot of questions. Okay, why is this happening? The root mass underneath these plants was amazing inside our little greenhouse test. So in this kind of part of the world, there's a lot of nitrogen testing done on the water wells. The NRD is really, really after us. So right now they're introducing the carrot. You better start figuring out how you're going to use less nitrogen, because pretty soon it's going to come with a stick. So it makes sense to us. We need to start looking at better ways to be more efficient. So we split up our RDX-N. We put a pint below the seed with our nitrogen, and then we came back, we Y dropped another pint on with our Y drop application. We cut our use right now on our best field. I don't have the fancy slides. Matt's kicking my butt on all this slides. I'm wearing my farmer clothes today, guys, because I'm coming to you as a farmer.
Yes, sir.
I'm my biggest customer. And we've used this on every single acre after what we've seen. The fields right now that didn't get hailed, we had a lot of hail this year. But hand me that here, right here. So actually, I wasn't even planning on doing this, but I mean, this is we actually broke it because we're looking at the kernel death. But we have these ears here, and my hands are huge. This is a 40,000 population, and under the Pioneer Yield Simulator, it says 278 bushel.
Mm.
I'm going to tell you, this is on 165 units of nitrogen. That's all it is on this field with the RDX-N. That's it. This is not a trial. This is a 115 acre pivot.
That's awesome.
That's all that's been applied.
So
now
Brett,
we use some micronutrients from Redox, and because our tissue sampling, we come back from Total Acre said we needed some different micros. After we made the application with their micros, we were good up to 400 bushel green across the board.
wow.
And it moved the needle immediately. But the thing we see, just like Matt noticed, our nitrogen levels are staying in the high 3s and low 4s all the way through. And we did 2 applications of N. That's it. We did it strip till and Y drop.
Brett, I want to ask you a couple questions because I think so. What you're saying is pretty powerful, but it is different than what Matt's done, which I love. I think where you got the start, Matt, and this is no offense to you, right? Because you started late because we had to.
Yep.
But I think what you're seeing too is getting it in furrow under at that 16-ounce rate early with your starter. That's what we love. I love to be able to get that. Think about that, right? We're establishing kernel around, we're laying all that stuff up front. The sooner we can get that on. I love the secondary application because then again, you can talk a little bit more about this, but those 2 things for guys that are dipping their toe, Brett, having at least the ability, the guys that are putting starter on need to be at least looking at that 16-ounce rate up front.
Well, we weren't taking their word for it. We were initially just going to reduce our nitrogen by the cost of what the RDX-N was. And then we were prepared to put on more. But what happened was we kept tissue sampling and our nitrogen levels were not falling, just like what Matt was saying. So we're like, we're not going to add it till we need it, because we could put it through the sprinkler. We can, fertigate it on anytime we wanted to. We never needed to. And we have the last final tissue sample, and I don't have it with me, but we are still high in nitrogen, and our corn is green from top to bottom. Never showed an ounce of nitrogen deficiency in any way, shape, or form. And now, Matt, you brought this up that I didn't even think about. We thought we were just magic in what we did because our phos levels were high. We never contributed to the RDX-N. I never even thought about that. I just thought maybe it was the year plants were healthier, but I'm thinking now there's probably a correlation there that I didn't see.
Yeah, and I think maybe, Brett, I'm going to bring John in here and talk a little bit about that. Again, I'm when I talk about energy allocation, reallocation of that energy, that's what we're seeing in season, which I think is what you're kind of talking about again.
Exactly.
We had some folks, and I think you guys know them as well, up in kind of Northwest Iowa that had RDX-N last year, and seeing residual effects. This is the humble, for the folks that don't know, Redox has been around for 32 years, like Aimee said, but the humble nature of this business, you never hear these extra claims, right? But there's these ancillary benefits because we're moving energy and seeing even residual year after year effects of products in the field. So maybe talk about, again, energy allocation and what, kind of to Brett's point, what are we seeing when we have that first application, 16 ounce and that secondary? He's seeing it in the fields. What do you like about that?
Well, not only the nitrogen we needed, it's a part of every cell. What we don't need is nitrogen stored in the vacuole as nitrate nitrogen. It is a stress on the plant. To the extent we can facilitate that conversion, as Aimee said, to amino acids and proteins, now that's performance. But as you mentioned, there are these additional benefits of energy allocation, and we don't talk a lot about the soil health benefit, but it's there. And as you mentioned, you can go right to the row corn that was treated in 2024, and you got soybeans there, and to the row with no RDX-N this year, better performance. Why? Well, it's the residual benefit of the microbial population from the previous year of improved soil health. And improved soil health has residual benefits. There's no RDX-N left in the soil, but there's the residual benefit of building soil health.
Cool. So that's something to look for next year, guys, as you're on those plots. Brett, a couple more things that I'd like to kind of hear from you too, because again, when you start looking at your customers, your average customer, right, versus the guy that maybe has all the equipment, how do you let them, or how do you start by dipping their toe, right? What's an average program? What are you looking at?
What's an average program out here?
Yeah, like just how you're putting an RDX-N program together for a customer.
Well, so we weren't planning on really putting it out there this year, but people started seeing what was happening with our crops. And honestly, I can't remember what we do. We put in like 6 or 7 additional orders because people just kept coming back for more and more of it because they seen how the crop was responding to it. I think this stuff sells itself, guys, because it works. When you can see a visual difference in the fields where you have test strips, guys react to that. Okay, they don't need to see the yield at the end. If your plant's healthier, the yield will come. So I think that everybody needs to get it in the soil early because out here we're cold, we're very high in pH, and we really need to get our microbial activity. We need to get everything moving into soil as quickly as we can. So early application out here is very important. I'm actually thinking we're even going to bump up a few more weeks, strip till even earlier to get it out there faster. And as far as for next year, how we're going to introduce people to it, we got people knocking our doors down right now, and that's not a lie. They are just, what are you doing? We got to try this. So we're not going to have a problem with people wanting to try it. Our problem is going to be to make sure that we're looking at some pretty awesome yields, but it's 1 year. It's definitely this product that we know is making a difference, but we also got to say, it's a pretty good year out here where we didn't get hail. Let's not over exaggerate the success because it looks that good right now.
Well, and I love that. And I think you'll find that's the approach of this company as well with Redox. The humility is here, right? At the end of the day, we want to get better every day in what we do. And I think that's a testament to what John, Darren, Colton, and Cody and this family-owned company does. For me to come over here, I've been consulting with them for a couple of years, but now full-time with Redox. It's been amazing to see the level of commitment and detail that they take to every approach to supporting customers, to supporting their dealer network, and building products the right way. Matt, can I come back to you? Thanks, Brett. Matt, can I come back to you? So the same question, how do you guys are looking to dip their toe next year? What's the program you're looking to, how are you going to get them into that RDX-N this year? What's it look like?
Yeah, I think I had a slide. I was asked what we're going to use moving forward. Obviously we want to make sure this is what we think it is when we harvest that field, is establish parity or better in terms of yield. And I didn't even think about putting it in furrow until now. We ahead of time, we don't put any nitrogen on with the planter. We have streamer tips on our sprayer. We are also strip till, and we stream on our 32 and ATS right over top of the row. So I thought until this meeting, I thought that was maybe the placement, but in furrow sounds maybe more of, even though streaming is efficient, and furrow is even more efficient in my opinion. So I quite honestly, that might be what we take a look at moving forward. And I think the price of nitrogen is going to play into this as well. We had that graph up on the screen earlier. Who remembers when nitrogen was $200 at the Gulf a year ago today?
Right.
So it's incredible what's happening, and that chart right there is going to be what I would say a driver behind a lot of conversations surrounding nitrogen efficiency products moving into the winter months here. And that led me into one of my questions, if I will. Now, what do you have anyone stacking RDX-N with another nitrogen efficiency product with some seed treatments or hopper box treatments? if RDX-N really does help the plant use nitrogen that much more efficiently, I think the next question will become, what can we put with it to make this even better?
I'll comment on that. I think most progressive growers are addressing all the fundamentals of nitrogen efficiency, stabilizers, multiple applications, anything they can to improve proven performance. And we endorse all of those. The mode of action is entirely in the plant. So RDX-N it's not a stabilizer, it's not a microbial product. What it does, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but it's all about gene expression. So it takes a really good system, it's going to make it better. So growers that are already trying to be as efficient with their inputs as possible, we endorse all of those. And there would be no conflict whatsoever in incorporating. In fact, we would encourage that.
Yeah, I think the other thing I guess I would add to that too, so that's a good point. It's not a biological, it's not a stabilizer, right? You're talking about a biostimulant here, a powerful biostimulant with RAM technology, redox active molecules. We didn't mention that, but I do want to kind of throw that out there again. When you talk about RAM technology, redox active molecules, if you think about charge, right, positive and negatives, now all of a sudden with RAM technology, it can take something out of balance and move a positive ion over here or a negative over here to bring things within balance. That's the simplest way that I can explain it, RAM technology. So Brett, back to you. When you look at this year, I see the American flag back there. I think I had seen a picture of a combine with a pretty cool logo on it. So as I pump your tires up, do you have a picture you can show? I'm going to challenge somebody else to put some, I think it was a green combine. I want to see some red combines out there, maybe some yellow ones, maybe a silver one or two with some of this stuff.
I didn't know there was anything but green combine.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. But
I go in the same field with a couple of red ones too. But
well, Brett, we were talking about this earlier offline, and his wife is the one that kind of holds things together back there. You admit that, right? You always say marry up.
yes, I married up very well. I would encourage all of you guys to do that. It helps everything. I was trying to find that picture and I can't seem to get into
That's
it.
okay. Maybe we'll show it after the fact, but he's got a sweet American flag.
There you go. If you guys can see that or not.
Yeah, turn it the other way.
Turn it side. Oh, there we
There you
go.
go.
Yeah, looks great. Now that thing can't get dirty is what we said. You got to clean it every night, right?
Well, but it's impossible because there's so much corn out there with all this RDX-N. What am I going to do?
I love it. Well, guys, thanks for making the time here. Brett, it was awesome to see you again. Matt, I haven't seen you yet, haven't met you yet. We're going to be out there, but at the end of the day, thanks for telling your stories. I think that's what ag's all about. You know, when I start looking at our ability as a industry to kind of come together, how do we mitigate stress, right? Retain yield. You look about energy allocation. That's what Redox Bio-Nutrients is all about. Aimee, I'll let you have the final words here.
Sure. Just we had some pictures of some other trials that we visited in the Midwest last week, Warren County, which is Western Indiana. Similar to what Brett did, this particular farmer did a 50-unit replacement at a side dress with this 28. So we're just pulling some airs. We were looking for parity. We were pretty impressed with what we saw. This is another this is a total acre trial that we did as well in Ridge Farm, Illinois. This particular operator was already pretty efficient. He had a 0.85 NUE. So the cool part about RDX-N is that it's assisting the plant to metabolize nitrogen much more efficiently inside the cell. So even if you've got, you know, a little bit of nitrogen or a lot of nitrogen, that the plant can assist. So this particular grower did 8 ounces of planting, did a 25-pound replacement at Y drop, put 16 ounces in. And again, we were looking for parity in a pretty efficient environment. And we were able to pull the ears and say, everything looks good so far. And then we were just running some math yesterday to say, you know, if you had 1,000 acres of corn and UAN's at 77 cents a pound going up and replaced 50 pounds of that, you're looking at about $14.50 an acre, almost like 15 grand. You know, so that's some real money based on like what's going on right now.
Aimee, can you go back? Because I think Matt and I were talking about this earlier. Just want to, maybe John, can I bring you into this? Because if we're hyper efficient, right? Matt, we were talking about the efficiency of the NUEs, right? NPR. If somebody says, that's okay, I'm good, I'm already at a 6/10 or 7/10 or 8/10 of a pound per bushel. Is it better? Does RDX-N work better in an environment where it's fully optimized, right? At 0.7, 0.85, or does it work better in an environment where they're like, I think Iowa State, UNL, some of the universities are saying like a 1-to-1 or a 1.2 units of N per. Where does RDX-N's sweet spot?
My perspective is I fully applaud the growers are at a NUE of 0.7, because that means that that's actually the amount of nitrogen that's in that kernel as you're taking it from the farm.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in a system making that work, that tells me right off the bat, you're doing a lot of things right. That's the perfect opportunity to introduce RDX-N, because you've got an efficient system. Now, those that are following more of the general recommendations, that are applying a lot more, it's still working well. But I love incorporating into a great grower, making it better. I love it.
I call it hyper efficiency, right? So the guy, and I'm going to pump Total Acres tires up a little bit, because I know most, if not all, those guys are somewhere between 0.6, 0.8, and they're running really lean. That's again the sweet spot, but I think it's a great opportunity for the guys that are higher in that world as well. So Aim, sorry to steal that. I just wanted to talk about NUE there for a minute. You got it on. It's
really cool. We could pull examples from, guys, again, maybe too high on nitrogen or pretty efficient, and we're still seeing some really great observations right now in season. So I guess last, I just wanted to let folks know, like Brett said, we're already talking to guys right now, making plans for 2026. So absolutely reach out to us on the Redox redoxgrows.com/Midwest, and you can reach out to us directly. Also, we have some fall in-person events scheduled. I put a QR code on here. We'll have some more on our website too. We have our research farm, which launched this past season. We're going to have results October 28th. That's a live event, but you can also call in and listen on a webinar, because most guys will be in a cab. And then we have two November events, one in Indianapolis and one in Omaha, where John and Darren and the Midwest team will come out and actually do some in-person training masterclass. So more to come on that, but you can call an RSVP or scan the QR code. And then again, if you are interested in getting RDX-N on your field right now, just reach out to us. We'll connect you with the local dealer, or we can work with you directly, but conversations are happening now. So
Matt, Brett, you guys are awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for letting us steal your morning.
Thank you guys.
All right,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you later. Have a good week. Be safe.